Right, well, from lunch, everyone, and a busy morning. We will continue our SWC meeting and start with item 9.3, the accommodation, the SWDC office accommodation options report. Bearing in mind that the outcomes we're looking for are to give direction for next. So keep that in mind, Mr. Binns and Mr. Gardner.
Can I just speak?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I just want to talk before I hand over to Matt, if that's okay with you, Chair. Given the recent statements made at the local government NZ conference, this is a really tricky report to bring to the table right now. Community may not see this as being key project that councils are looking at. I need to stress that the option of doing nothing with these office buildings now has passed. From the safety of my staff perspective, we need to bring these issues to the front and make you as the councillors very aware of the situation that we're dealing with. Matt has done an amazing job pulling this report together and doing all of the background work to get us to this point. And for that, I do sincerely thank him, because he's not been with council long and I threw the curveball straight at him, which was a bit of a hospital pass, apologies. So yeah, I am well aware of how this will sit, but we do need direction from you on what next steps you are willing to support. And having said that, I'll pass over to Matt. He can walk you through.
I'd just quickly follow that by saying that I would hope that most people understand that accommodation for our organisation is not a nice area. We do actually require healthy, safe accommodation.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Hand over to both Mr. Gardner and Mr. Binns.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Janice. So I'll take the report as read. I won't go through it line by line. I appreciate it's quite long. It highlights a range of issues facing the main site of Martinborough. These range from serious health and safety risks through to usability of the site for effective service delivery. There is lacked a long-term planning for and maintenance of the council's office portfolio to date. The main site of Martinborough has deteriorated for a significant period of time. Issues have either been ignored or kind of short-term low-cost options taken to try and manage. These have now failed to keep up with the growing deterioration. There are fundamental issues with the building, which the paper sets out, and alongside this, the council's split across multiple sites as well, which impacts service delivery and the function of teams. There are four main options. Really, as the chair's mentioned, we're looking for a steer. And kind of happy to field any questions the committee might have. Or do you want to add anything?
I mean, this is very much my thanks also to Matt for doing this great background research. But there is another component to it as well. We have councillors told me throughout last year as well. I talked a lot about our physical environment being complementary to our cultural and our technological environment, and in fact we have two very significant risk areas here. The fact that our physical council officers aren't conducive towards good collaborative working, better customer outcomes, and the customer experience is a risk which is actually impacting upon how we're viewed within the community. And then secondly, the effectiveness of our culture in terms of how we collaborate internally to deliver on those outcomes also, because we, despite the fact that there are many examples throughout the world of how people work remotely or work in different time zones even, I've managed teams myself in different time zones, the reality of it is that there is always a culture that is well considered in the delivery of a particular task. And what we're facing here is actually a risk to how we're able to deliver our core services in its current form. So Those are just highlight key points that I've raised in addition to the physical environment that we're in.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, so we'll start with Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thanks for starting with me, because I remember back in 1989 when that particular building was a part of the Featherston County Council, and during the 89 local government reform, when all our little borough councils, Featherston, Martinborough and Greytown, were captured, and we became one South Wairarapa District Council. That was the only building of a reasonable size that would actually accommodate a new council. Hence why we're in Martinborough, and hence why we've got a 1950s, early 1950s dilapidated building in today's modern era. I have to say, I read through the report, and thanks, guys, that's quite a comprehensive report. I didn't drill down on the detail, and certainly the asbestos report and the fungal report and some of the scientific stuff that really didn't excite me that much, so I sort of drifted past it. But I think the report is quite comprehensive. And this is not a new conversation, I might add. It's been happening now for a number of years. And if I go back when I was elected in 2013, there was a hot topic then. And then in 20, when did we do this Waihinga Centre up? I can't remember now, but it was a few years ago now. And all of a sudden the council chambers moved from our specific chambers within the main building there over to here. And we lost so much of our history in terms of the pictures, even the pictures down the wall, which gave you a little bit of inspiration about those that had gone before you, you know. So our meeting room had a flag at the end. The chambers were set up quite nicely, and the chambers were also used for other meetings outside council meetings as well. But it was the home, our home, I guess, to some extent, of us elected councillors, and for those mayors and councillors that had gone before us. So it held a certain amount of significance. That's not to say that we haven't moved on and that we're modern era now, and those things aren't perhaps so important. I don't know. Maybe I've got that wrong. But certainly in terms of accommodation, we've grown. I've always had a little bit of a gripe about having to lease a property in Greytown, for instance, at a substantial price. Which sort of separates fragments the organisation, because you aren't interacting on a daily basis. So whatever you do, you need to make the decision and move on and get things done, to be quite honest, because you can't keep talking another 10 years around the same table and nothing happens. So that's my 10 bobs worth. What it's worth.
Councillor Elams, your 10 bobs worth, please.
Worth might not be 10 bobs worth. Thanks, Chair. My view after reading that report, it's pretty disappointing to see the state and the condition. I mean, I think we all knew that there were issues there, but that report spells it out in no uncertain terms. And not only are we aware now, our ratepayers and the community further afield now know what our staff are working in. In my view, I think health and safety, well, I know that health and safety of our staff is our members of the public and our elected members is crucial. And looking through at those different options, I'm loath to throw good money after bad. However, I'm mindful that we do need to provide safe working spaces for staff and the public that come in and out of that building, and identifying, I think, a long-term solution is not going to be an overnight fix. So I think looking at options 2 and 3, I think, you know, the values, while you know, it's good to put a value on paper. We all know what happens with building renovations and building projects, and the budgets always blow out. So I think, you know, for me, options 2 and 3 would again be throwing good money after bad. I would like to see council identify a solution that's affordable to our ratepayers, is functional for staff, public, elected members, as well as being fit for purpose. I don't think that we need to have a gold-plated, flashy monument that's going to win architectural awards like you know, this building here is certainly nice and was put up for architectural awards, but we need to be mindful of what our ratepayers and our residents can afford. And I don't think that we are tied to Martinborough. We can have a new building anywhere in the South Wairarapa. We already own land over at Featherston, at the Featherston Golf Course. Should we not be thinking, be smart about utilising land and space that we already own to reduce the expenditure and the costs of our ratepayers going forward? So, I mean, I think, going back in summary, I think option one, we need to spend that money to improve the workspaces now, and we need to look forward towards a completely new premise, not necessarily here in Martinborough.
Thank you, Councillor Elands, Councillor Macaulay, and then Councillor Maynard.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. We just can't continue with this. It's you know, our responsibility as an employer, as we're discussing before, you know, morally, but also legally, to provide safe conditions for our staff to work in. I mean, the continuation of business is very tricky. But actually, Councillor Elands and I had a bit of a talk, and I think too that we need to look at you know, possibly a new premises. But I think we want to look at future proofing it in terms of it could be you know, a strong possibility of amalgamation. So we, you know, would be quite good if it would the staff could come up with some great solution where we could work in partnership with somebody who would fund the building. It could be built so it could be divided into two spaces if amalgamation did occur. Core services would still require to give that flexibility, but and obviously this isn't going to happen overnight, so we do have to spend something to get the premises safe for the staff in the interim.
To you, Councillor Maynard, I just ask a couple of questions of our officers myself. The office issues part of the report highlights the fact that as we start to, if we were to start to make some repairs, that actually some of the health and safety issues get worse in the short term. So, for instance, as we, if we were to fix the roof and the Waiahine room dries out, actually the mould spores also dry out, become airborne, and create a higher risk to human safety than they do at the moment while they're nice and damp and stable. What plans do we have for accommodation in the immediate future, the short term? Are we looking at sites we already have in our portfolio? Is movement within our own portfolio an immediate option?
This one, thank you, Chair. So a couple of things. So if we did repair that section of a roof, they would strip away all the mould and fungal spores as well as part of that work. So when the room dried out, there shouldn't be anything to release. So that would be really useful. Any work is potentially going to be disruptive. So we would look potentially to adopt more of a hybrid working model potentially during that work if we had to relocate staff or whatever. So at the moment, many come in 4 or 5 days a week. We could reduce that staff where it works. And that could free up office space to allow us to do the work in certain sections of the building. We also have the Greytown space, which we can use in that regard potentially as well, although there's not a lot of capacity in there. What I would say is this is early thinking in terms of options. So we haven't, because there's quite a diverse array of options, we haven't spent a lot of time and money at that time, or potentially contractors, to understand what we could do and design it. So really today is the discussion of what's the kind of committee's steer or ambition in this space, and if we get that, then we go down a certain route and bring back more detail. But there is, you know, as I'm sure Janice would agree, health and safety is paramount. So whatever work we did within the office space, we would be putting that first and foremost for our staff. So if there was any impact as that as the office drying out, we would obviously get the mould treatment in if there was any issue, make sure we protected our staff.
There are some unknowns, unfortunately, and it's just by by the nature of the exploratory work that might need to be carried out, or as panels start being removed from walls, etc., if there was more extensive work undertaken because there's asbestos in the external panelling. We don't know if it's in the walls itself or in flooring joists. So there are some unknowns, and so that's really why we need a direction from yourselves to help take that first step, if you like.
So I too feel like Janice in the fact that this having to come to the table at this time when we've been given a hard steer is always very difficult. And I have also been thinking about the fact that there, you know, although it may be lovely to well, not lovely, it is a necessity no matter what we need to do to make it safe. That is paramount. However, when it comes to costings, my concern would be around the fact that possibly we may not, you know, if there was this talk with regards, now that we are looking with regards to our water systems, what the government has said to us with regards to that, having to look at amalgamation in that area, what next to amalgamate. So I have that in the back of my mind too. And the one thing I don't want to do is, you know, throw good money out to bed. So I'm in a kind of area where I'm like, do we just spend what we need to spend? I like the fact that you said that the work that you're talking about, you wouldn't just leave dry spores in the air. You know, this is actually already looked at with regards to the first amount, because we don't know at the moment. There's so many unknowns with regards to what is going on with us here and some of the other spaces that we have to prioritise. That's my only concern. I like Aidan's thoughts, Councillor Elam's thoughts with regards to looking at land that we already own. If we were looking at something, because we know, and I do note that I see here that the heritage listing still, we don't actually know whether or not it has an impact. That hasn't actually been, so it will have an impact on any costings or anything that we're wanting to do to that building.
Through the chair, not in terms of the internal work, if we were to do internal refurb. The impact it has is on its future sale value because you can't demolish the site. So if you were to try and sell that site for commercial use, somebody can't come with a bulldozer and just clear the site and develop something new on that site because that internal structure is the protected structure. The whole premise of that building is first earthquake proof building in the South Wairarapa in the 1950s. So that's why it has heritage status. So that depresses its value to anyone else who may want to take that building on in the future. But in terms of internal fit out, it doesn't prohibit us from removing some of the internal walls and making it more of an open plan space, so long as we don't try and get rid of the big safe in the middle, which I wouldn't like to do given the size of those walls.
Yeah.
If I can be maybe a little bit provocative, I'm hearing loud and clear, obviously, about the idea and the prospect of amalgamation at some point in time. Councillor Elam's comment about future proofing. It is interesting when you look at the bigger picture to get from one extreme of Masterton as an example to the extreme of the South Wairarapa. You'd be driving probably 4 hours end to end. There is with an area that's geographically is spread out in the Wairarapa, then there is an argument that there's always going to have to be some kind of representation in the local community, facilities in the local community where services are based out of to help service those areas of the community. And so I can't see there being an occasion when even post amalgamation, that all staff would be based in one location because of the distance that people would have to travel in order to service different parts of the district.
So with regards to the fact that it's awesome earthquake, such amazing earthquake proofing that we don't need to worry about that side of things. And So, and it's internal, we can build up.
I've not spoken to the building team about building up, but I would suggest possibly not, because my understanding is that it's a concrete core with a floating wooden platform attached to it, which means it won't have the necessary pilings into the ground to secure a second story. It does where the archive is, but that's just records. So it's a totally different ball game when you're coming to putting people into a second story.
So you'd need to build out.
We think out rather than up.
Okay.
So
Where you car park.
Yeah.
I'm just going to remind everyone that we're not looking for a set one outcome today. We are looking for a steer.
But I'm sorry, it's worth it, already.
I'll take a last few comments, take the mayor and then councillor Gray, and then I'll be looking for that steer rather than just continuing to hype the size.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to take it as assumed that we all absolutely endorse that whatever outcome comes, it has to meet, good health safety standards. So I'm just not going to talk about that. I will mention heritage buildings, however, at the LGNZ conference, Minister Bishop, who's in charge of resource management and some of those things, made a very clear statement that he thinks the way heritage status on useless buildings can hold up development is time for a rethink. And but anyway, my observation is that when the point comes for a decision, other than health and safety, cost is the major consideration. I don't mean cost short term, because whereas it says do nothing minimum, the approximate cost is 130,000. To be honest, I do not know that much. What I'm looking for is what I call the lifetime cost. So we make a repair now for 130,000, and the chances are in 5 years' time we'll be doing it all over again and all over again. And before we know it, we will have spent a whole lot more than 130,000, even though in the very narrow short term that looked like the better cost. So if you do spend 130,000 this year and again in 5 years' time, etc., or even if you go to the 1.5 million, refurbish everything, what does it do to depreciation over the next 30 years? What does it do to maintenance? What does it do to borrowing costs, etc., etc., etc.? There's a whole lot of costs that are going to arise in the longer term from the decisions we make in the short term. And I think before we can come to any conclusion, I think we have to have those well enough spelled out so that what I call the average sensible resident can see the good sense in whatever decision that we are going to make. So that's my issue around cost. But the costs we've got here may be the very short term. Let's spend 1.5 million and we'll get something first. But that's not really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, but over the life of the building, whichever building we end up with, what are going to be the costs. And my experience is, in view of the fact that from when this building was built till today, so many building standards have changed and improved, and it's nearly always much more costly to retrofit those changes and improvements than it is to start from scratch. I'll be very surprised if starting from scratch isn't by far the cheapest and by far the most comfortable and the safest option as well. But that's where I think we need some advice, Madam Chair. And then if we do that, it does bring up the question, okay, if we do something new, or if we go with the option that says we extend the current building, the what is it that we're going to get. Well, I don't believe I will meet one ratepayer in 100 who will say that a purpose-built council chamber is good value for money. And I would agree with them. The other thing, I suspect a lot of them would also say that leasing a building probably is good value for money because it doesn't affect our borrowing, it doesn't affect our depreciation. And what's more, if we do amalgamate, we can probably exit it in 2 years and have a clean break. I think we need to give very serious consideration to the hybrid working model. It's clear that large chunks of the Wellington workforce, and we've attracted some of those recently, are probably very used to hot desking, very used to the hybrid approach of working from home, working from office, operating in a range of ways that 20 years ago would have seemed quite odd. We should be making use of technology where we can. I'm definitely a keen supporter of what's referred to there as the additional option. But I just want to pick up on one thing. So Councillor Ealams refers to the fact that we've got land, we've got assets around the district, and we ought to be considering those. And I think that makes good sense. But I think we should also be taking a close look at the built assets we currently own and asking ourselves, are we getting, if you like, good use out of all our assets? Now, we had a discussion at our last meeting, in fact, about the town hall building in Greytown. In my view, the town hall building in Greytown has a space which is very hardly used at all. It's just a thoroughfare to the library. It would be quite possible, in my view, to contemplate creating a proper thoroughfare and hiving off some of that space as a working space. And I would be looking for analysis in relation to all of the built assets that the council has to make sure before we go and build more, we are getting maximal use of what we already own. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, final comments from you, and then we'll start moving in a steering direction.
Fantastic. Super quick comments. I just would like to say thank you to Paul for initiating this conversation with myself and the broader council earlier on in the triennium, and that there's already been a bunch of work gone into where we're at with this and looking at it from an organisational point of view. I think any of the threads that you follow along with this, you generally seem to end up in a place where the Kitchener Street offices are just not long-term going to be suitable for having a council that is something that the community can be proud of. So I think if I can jump into the steering part of it, I think we need to have immediate band-aid solutions. We can't have staff working in a place where there's toxic mould legally or morally. We can't do that. And I think the fact that this has been going on for so long is pretty comprehensible, really. So anything that I think we can do to resolve those issues, we absolutely have to fund that. And then I think long term we should be looking at moving away from the Kitchener Street site. So I'm pretty happy with option 4, mostly because option 4 gives us an opportunity to look at buildings that are future proof, that are resilient, that could function as an emergency hub if we needed it to, could have a very light ecological environmental footprint. And even if it is a building that we don't end up using long term, it would remain as an asset for our district or whoever takes it up after us. So.
Thank you. Janice had some wrapping words.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There've been a lot of comments around the table, and all of them really welcome to hear that you acknowledge the situation that we find ourselves in. I think when Matt and I first spoke about this, we were very aware of the potential amalgamation conversation that might follow Local Waters done well. So we were looking more at how we would move through to a period of time, you know, like 2 to 3 years beyond where we are now, given the 2-year timeframe around Local Waters. Building a new building isn't going to be cheap. I know Councillor Gray and I spoke about this very early on in my arrival here, and I was very pleased to hear that she thought we could do it for a very small amount of money.
Needed at
That's not
extra zero on the end of it.
You're looking circa $20 million, I would have thought, to build a new building. And most of that is consumed with the large amounts of data cabling and things that you require within the building, not necessarily just the construction of the building. If someone else was to build a building for us and then for us to lease it, that is a total ratepayer funded cost. So that it all falls onto your ratepayers to pay. So that just needs to be kept in mind as well. So whilst you're not necessarily paying depreciation and interest, all of that lease cost falls to the ratepayers. So there is a balancing act to have there. Band-aids are not going to fix the problem. So we need to have a solution that is going to keep us safe for the next 2 to 3 years in that building, in my mind. Hot desking is an option, but it's not a solution. That will not save us in the long term. We've also looked, Paul and I spent quite a lot of time in my office spitballing about what space we'd got, what we could move, how we could move people around. And we did talk about the town hall in Greytown. That building doesn't have the Wi-Fi capacity that it would need in order to support staff. And with the library located where it is at the back of the building up those stairs, you would have people traversing through office space, or you would completely close down that atrium space with all the windows, and have a dark corridor leading to the library. So it's really technically difficult to figure out how we would use that effectively without spending a lot of money that we could easily spend on Martinborough and stay where we are. So I thank you for the fact that you're taking this seriously, and I am looking forward to hearing where you point us next. Today is about you giving us guidance on which options you want us to spend more time on. If Matt was to research all of these options and come back to you with detailed numbers, we would be doing this for the next 12 months. We want whatever we do next to be effective and good use of our resources and our time. We are resourceful within the 4 walls of council, so I don't want to have to go and research all of these. I would like it to be quite a narrow focus, if possible, to give Matt the guidance he needs on what the next steps are. Thank you.
Thank you. I am quite comfortable moving us in a steering direction. I think with all things considered, to my mind, we need to be looking at option 2 with a sort of add-on of the extension of the building. So I would kind of consider that option 2 and option 2.5. My immediate concern is for the health and safety of the staff that are working in the building. I am aware that various offices and toilet blocks and things are now not able to be used. And so I'm not sure if it's a extra job for Matt or if it is one for you, Janice, but I want to be assured that our staff, that situation is continuing to be monitored and our staff are continuing to be safe and have a healthy business.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, so we've had mould people come in, defaulted to remove the spores, and we've removed the carpet. So although it's not a long-term solution, because the building is still leaking, those rooms are now safe for now until mould regrows and we get it resprayed, etc. So from a health and safety perspective, we are trying to manage it, but the deterioration is continuing. So at some point, it's going to break.
And just a small addition to that, Madam Chair, the roofing issue is beyond the mould. And for example, in my office, was one of the ones that was referenced. And there's water coming, you only need a heavy downpour and the water comes down the electrical conduit. And so the health and safety implications are beyond what you can inhale.
So we're looking for a steer. So what I'm looking for, we are running over time. So what I'm looking for is your indication of which of the options you want to further reference.
So thank you for your view on the world in terms of what happens next. But my option is option 4, and I think that if we're looking at something long term, no matter whether amalgamation occurs or not, the reality is we're still going to need a southern building that would house our people down here. So to me, option 4 is something that is a no-brainer that we're going to have done over a reasonable period of time. I have to question the 20 million because I don't know if it would ever be $20 million. I might be out of touch with certain things, but all right. Yeah,
Examples.
yeah, because that's a fair chunk of cash, you know that, isn't it? Yeah. But immediately, we've obviously got to resolve the issue. So therefore, there's a bit of a hybrid between looking at number 4 and what was the remedial work on option 1, was it? Yeah, 1 and 4. That's my view.
Thank you. I'm going to whiz around the room. Janice is taking a tally. Councillor Gray, your preferred next steps for investigation.
So my preference is the same as Councillor Olds, that we would go with 1 and 4. However, also very happy to support our CE in what she recommends is the best for us to go forward with. So if what you're saying is that long term, our organisation is better with options 2 or 3, I would be happy to support that.
Councillor Maynard, can you give us your top 2 preferred next steps, please?
Yeah, I think the reality is at the moment, we've just sat here all morning and we've heard from the smallest portion of ratepayers, not everybody who I think individually we've heard from. So my concern is the fact that people are struggling. People are struggling to find the amount now each week and be able to pay any more. And so for that reason, I'm happy to look at number 1. I do also think that we have assets, you know, like the Greytown Town Hall, that I would really like us to kind of think about, because it may be, I understand what you're saying with regards to it could be dark, but there are ways to mitigate a dark hallway and turn it into something else if we make it so that way, you know, you have the partition that doesn't go all the way to the, you know, like to the roof to stop it, and that way there's still natural light flooding. Sorry, have the other access way there, something like that, and of course there's already offices upstairs.
What
So,
are you steering?
Yeah, I'm just saying it's actually not on here, but I think when for me, my other option would be to look at what assets we currently have at the moment and what we can do to utilise those.
So really.
Yeah, so that's why I'd like to be explored, because there will be a cost.
So which way are you?
$40 million.
In a perfect world, I like 4, but we're not in that perfect world. So everything really is a Band-Aid option. But what's going to be less harmful to our ratepayers? That's number 1.
Yeah, Councillor Ellis.
Like Councillor Olds said earlier, option 1 for me to Band-Aid and carry out the repairs immediately, and then start looking at option 4 going forward.
Yeah, Martin.
Yes, well, I am in favour of either option 2 or option 4, depending on which is the least cost to our ratepayers. And I don't think if for example, we focus entirely on one option, we sort of run down that particular rabbit hole, and at the end we come back and say, oh, it's going to cost X, Y, Z. Well, I don't think that's going to satisfy anybody, because anybody is going to say, well, how would that compare to the next most obvious option? I've just been looking up some data here. The cost of a new commercial building ranges between $2,000 and $4,000 square metre. So how many square metres do you think we're looking at, please?
I think the building's currently about 600 square metres, but that doesn't house everyone. So you're probably looking at 800 square metres.
Well, yes, maybe. Anyway, you can do the maths, and then there'll be some refurbishment costs as well. I suspect that just on the face of it, option 2, this is option, probably don't have a lot of difference in upfront costs. I'm convinced they have a lot of difference in long-term costs.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Bosley, your 2 top moving forward options.
I still came to the meeting a little bit late. My apologies for that, Chair. So sort of kind of leaping in. Yeah, I'd like to see a bit more work done in that Greytown Town Hall space. Engage some people that can actually tell us that there's got to be a way of thinking outside the box here on a temporary solution. We talk about a Band-Aid. Kind of needs something more than a Band-Aid, I think. She said it's morally reprehensible. It's actually morally bankrupt to put people in that office on Commissioner Street right now. So long story short, for me, it's between 1 and 4. But in the short term, I think we should look at where we can go. And for me, the town hall's got significant, as the Mayor said, it's got significant potential to be a stopgap solution.
We can get a
Councillor McCall.
Okay, well, councillor Beck sort of took some of the words out of my mouth, but I actually don't think we have got enough information to decide on which option to give the steer forward through and to eliminate other options. I would like to give the steer forward to the Chief Executive that we want to look at safety to staff, safety and health to staff, the least impact on the ratepayer, and future proofing. And I'd like to see more work done on and the Chief Executive coming to us with a recommendation within that highest aspect. That's what I would like to see.
Through the chair, what I've heard is a lot of support for option 1, side to option 4. Option 1 only if we're pursuing option 4.
I'll fill the
Yeah.
gap.
I apologise.
No. Pick one ear open, because my concern with option 1 and 4 isn't option 1 and 4 in itself. It's just that option 1 and 4 are tied to each other. You're suggesting, most of those who said 1 and 4 are suggesting we would do 1 in the short term with the option of 4 and as the long-term option. If the team go away and work on 1 and 4 and the numbers don't work in the way that you've imagined they do now, 1 and 4 no longer become not two separate options. They are in fact one option. So really what we've given the team to work with is all the options, because if 1 and 4 don't work, you said 1 on its own, Pat, which is great.
No, I'm listening to what you're saying.
But everybody else said 1 and 4, and if 1 and tied together. And
No, that's short-term solution,
Yeah.
long-term.
long-term
So what's the problem?
But these guys have got to go away and work out the numbers on a much more in-depth scale,
One was the.
because because all we're doing is giving them a steer. We're not giving them a decision.
Oh.
So if they come back with those in-depth numbers and 1 and 4 no longer work, they actually have got to start back at the beginning again. We've not moved them forward. That's
I don't think that's going to happen.
raising it as an issue.
I think they'll take some good positive steps out of that.
Hmm.
Sorry, Jen.
I have concerns around option 1. And it says here in terms of the cons around option 1 is the ongoing issues are likely to increase. It is only dealing with one part of the roof. It's installing security doors and continuing those short-term treatments that we've already got in place for the areas that we know are of a concern. And you've heard Paul mention the fact that when it pours down with rain, we have water coming down electrical conduits. That is a health and safety. I mean, I dread to think what could happen with water and electricity combining. And that in itself, because of where it lands, then leads to the black mold and the spores. So option 1 is, to me, it is a true band-aid, and it will probably lurch us forward 12 months, and then we'll come back and have the same conversation all over again. Option 4 is based on us being able to have a conversation with a developer who would build something fit for purpose to a specification that we're yet to determine, on a location that we are yet to determine, and in complete compliance with the building code today as a brand new building. Option 2 is a full replace of the roof. And that, I think, is probably the best solution for the building in the long term. If we think about future-proofing that building for post South Wairarapa District Council, if you move out in the future, if that roof is not dealt with, then it's just going to continue to leak in different places. It's like it's almost like patching an exhaust on a car. We'll fix that bit and then it will go in different places, and having all those aircon units on the roof isn't helping us either. Option 3 is the same as option 2, but with an extended space. Whether we do or don't do that, I'm ambivalent to that. From my seat, it's option 1 is the Hail Mary, get us out of the mess we're in today solution. Option 2 for me would be the more preferred solution. But I think we need, from what I'm hearing, to do more options analysis. What I don't have is the resource for that. It's not in our current planning, not in our current budgets, not something that we would necessarily have the resource in-house to do, to give you the detail that you're looking for to make a decision.
What I might also add is that the use of the Greytown building would be a consideration whilst we did any remedial work. So it isn't an option really that's on the table unless we considered the use of the entire
It would be a
building. It would be a temporary stopgap whilst we did the work on the building, or explored other options to remove or eliminate the health and safety risk.
Can I just make a comment? Because we could spend all day going backwards and forwards and over this, and the reality is we have to make a decision. I mean, Janice has just pointed out that option 1 is a true band-aid, and we know that. We know it's but it's a small investment basically to get us over a period of time. In fact, if we did too good a job, then people may say, well, we don't have a case to argue for a new build now because we've managed to fix the old one up. You know, so that's the danger we face, and we know that the current council buildings are not fit for purpose. They're not designed correctly for this modern era. We have to go to a new build. That's my view. But I don't want to see us investing a lot of money in an old building, basically, that that's fine.
Has anyone had a conversation with the Greytown Lands, the Greytown Lands Trust about financing, developing, so that way a building retains in community ownership?
Through the chair, that is certainly the direction that we were heading, but I don't know whether, and I'm going to drop Sarah a curveball here, in terms of from starting discussion to end of build, we're probably talking 2 years for a commercial build?
12 months. 12 months.
At a minimum, 2 years.
But I have a confirmation, Janice. What I'm saying is, I think I'm hearing is that you're saying that your preferred option would be to do the roof replace the roof, is that what you're saying? And then that would give you time to do all the other thing and give us some resale possibilities on the build.
So my preferred option is option 2.
Yeah,
Which
okay.
is to use the least amount of money, but to get a good outcome for the building and for the staff that work within the building in I'm not saying a gold-plated, all singing or dancing office. I'm talking a more fit for purpose office environment that they can function well in, that then gives you a better resale value on the property if you move out. As it currently stands, I'm not sure that, you would get that.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that, chief executive staff have been looking at all these options, and I would like to go.
We're going to take 2 final comments. We'll take Councillor Bosley and then the Mayor, and then we need to move on. We're well behind time.
Okay, so option 2, but you still end up with Greytown being used, the office is still split across 2 locations.
Yes.
And I think one with Colin Olds on this, Councillor Olds, is that you do that job number 2. That's it. There's no going to back later on going, right, we now want to move to a new building, future proof, all those things, bring the team back together to one location. That's just never going to happen once we do option 2, I would suspect. Which means the wrong way to go.
If we do option 2, though, that we then would have an asset that would be worth more than what it is currently.
It's a heritage asset. There's no real value to it.
Well, there's no word in the fact that it
It's
is.
a heritage listed asset. We never.
No, we can still.
All that buildings are massive.
Who too? Who's going to buy a heritage asset?
We're going to move to the Mayor and then we'll carry on.
Can I just explain that one of my assumptions, we had 4 options. And what we were looking at is one of those 4 options as the long-term solution. And it seemed to me that irrespective of what option you did, you were going to have to do some temporary band-aiding anyway, which is kind of out to the side. If I'm wrong there, and it seems to me some people have said, oh, we'll do option 1 and then we'll do option 4. Well, that's not what I understood we were being asked. I just take it, if, for example, you do a complete refurbishment of the building, you're going to have to move everybody out, you're going to have to find them somewhere to work. So that is a plus, no matter which option you possibly do, including potentially option 1. So I think it, in a sense, the CE prefers option 2. I personally prefer option 4 because I believe it will end up with a better and a cheaper solution. But it doesn't matter what I think. I think that's where some analysis is required. And I shouldn't think it would take too long, except for one small thing. That is, I've never yet seen a refurbishment that came in on budget, whereas I've seen plenty of builds that do.
Do you have enough to move forward?
Yes, please say yes.
Yeah.
I support option 2.
Yes, I support option 2. And the Mayor supports option 2. Shall we have a vote?
No, Mayor supports option 4.
I think the Mayor makes a good point though, is what is needed regardless is and some sort of immediate resolve to the health and safety issues that exist here and now.
Correct.
And
Option 4.
Some sort of long-term solve as well. Option 2 may very well end up being the long-term solve that is required. We don't know because that level of work hasn't been done, but we need enough for these guys to move forward with, and they can't move forward with it.
I would suggest that we investigate 2 and 4. 2 in terms of it encompasses 1. So if we were to base it on 1, but with the full roof, so that you could see the difference between 1 and 2, but then it would involve having conversations with other parties to see if there's any willingness to engage.
Can I just put a cautionary because 2 is a reasonable size investment with a new roof, etc., etc. 4 is a completely new rebuild. The cautionary note would be around the change in governance around this table, for instance, in 12 months' time. And it may well be that the new councils will turn around and say, well, you've committed that investment to putting a new roof on there, that's where you're going to stay for the next 10 or 15 years. Oh, seriously, I'm not joking, because I've seen it happen. So you've got to be comfortable with the decision that we make today, saying that that's a short-term fix, and our long-term view is to build something that's purpose-built.
It's probably a meeting, at least probably 2 meetings before we'll give any decision on what the outcome is.
Yeah, I understand.
We just want to move forward with
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
to reassure the staff that there is going to be action, because we've had this conversation many times, and
Yeah.
what I've heard is, yeah, right, yeah, we've done that before, not gone anywhere. So we just need to know where to go with what we want to do here. But
I'm going to take a show of hands on 2 and 4, because we've got 1 hour before our next meeting and a hell of a lot of stuff to get through. So all those in favour of moving forward, and that's just simply getting information on 2 and 4, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. It will move that motion.
Committing to it.
But I did want to say, sorry, that I wasn't allowed, but I would like to say that actually one thing that we need to look at is there's a lot of builders out there that don't have anything to build at the moment. So I think,
Oh, no.
and I think the reality is that actually that we could be in a good position to be able to do it and do it fast.
Yep.
Whichever is decided, that's all right.
Bring up Rick Zokis and do a design and build some sketch.
It's not a motion, it's
It's the current one has to win us.
just want to.
Building all in silver, silence.
Can I have a mover, please,
Okay.
to note the current issues and ongoing deterioration of the 19th
Yes, yeah.
Smith building. Thank you, Councillor Old.
Thank you.
Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
No. Motion is carried.
Where are we up to now?
We are moving to the Greytown Drinking Water Services Consultation Report, which is 9. We've got Wellington Water online.
Yeah, that'd be great.
With us and Texter, and then we've got Adam and Andrew and Lawrence with us online.
What page are we at? I can't. Get on board water. Soldiers Memorial Park.
When you're ready, take the paper as read, but key highlights, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just since we had our last workshop, I've also met up with the Greytown Community Board, and they appreciated the heads up information. Also provided us with some stakeholders to engage with, which we have also included in our engagement plan. We have developed an engagement plan now, or engagement strategy, of which will be jointly delivering on Monday in partnership with Wellington Water. This will also include a stakeholders event on the 28th of September within the reserve as well, and just to gather that feedback. So yeah, I'll take the report as read. Obviously, there's quite a lot of information there. We've worked really hard, and Janice is very supportive, and so is Alex as well. Try to make it as transparent as possible what the decisions are that you're making. First and foremost, one is where would you like it? Knowing that there are options around the feasibility of those options, the costs related to it, but also how we're going to pay for it as well. And I guess it may have been the discussion of council today is cost, and those options are there to public provide feedback. I just want to note one other thing too, that is that while of the additional options, we may receive feedback on that they support having it in the reserve. I just wanted to note that feasibility studies will still need to be done on those alternative options. Could cost between $80,000 to $100,000 each, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we would be able to deliver those reserves. So just wanted to note that as a potential risk to this, as in the process we come out with results, but that also could be a challenge. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just a reminder that the recommendations for this discussion are around the adoption of the statement of proposal and the consultation document, noting that the strategy working committee will hear something received. So I'd like to avoid relitigating where things should be. I'd like to keep our conversation to the consultation document, please. So Councillor Elands and then Councillor Olds.
Thanks, Chair. It's great that we're getting to the stage. I think that we need to be really crystal clear that while it is a Greytown water project to go into Greytown for those residents, we need to be crystal clear that we need all of our South Wairarapa district residents and ratepayers to provide feedback, because there will be a cost for not only the Greytown residents, but the rest of the residents, as if the Curafiti Street option and the Old Borough Council option are taken. And I think there's a risk that if we don't publicise that and ensure that people clearly understand that, we're going to miss the point, or the boat will be missed. And again, that term unintended consequences might pop up.
Funding options are in the document.
I think the point is that this collective we will need to be really clear that this isn't just a Greytown consultation. This is a South Wairarapa consultation. So the point well made.
Yeah, so I just wanted to compliment the officers for putting the paper together, because I think it covers off all the things that we raised, I think, during the last round of consultation about Soldiers Memorial Park. And I think that this is a document that you could clearly share in the public now and expect to receive some feedback from members of our community. So that's really all I had to say. Happy to endorse.
Any other comment, Councillor Gray?
Just a small comment again. Thank you very much to the officers for the work that's gone into this, and for Wellington Water as well. And this is a difficult project, and there's water under the bridge with it. The only point I would like to make, and I note it on this report, but also I guess any reports going forward, there's a section in here about climate change, and it talks about the impacts of this work on climate change. What I'd really like to see is the impacts of climate change on our projects. So out of all of these projects, are there any that are more resilient in the face of climate change or help us to adapt to the impacts of climate change going forward? And I think, being that this is a big water project, as we head into times of drought, I think that's definitely something to front and centre with us. But
cool, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not sensing anyone having burning things to say. So in the interest of time and trying my luck today, I'm going to ask for a mover that will receive the Greytown Drinking Water Services Consultation Report, adopt the Statement of Proposal and Consultation Document, which is in Appendix 1, and note the Strategy Working Committee will hear submissions received, if any, on the consultation. Thank you, Councillor Olds. Councillor Bosley will do the seconding. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. The motion is carried.
Well done.
Well done, everyone. And just to note, just in case anyone is watching online and sort of catching this for the first time, this has been an ongoing debate for probably the best part of over 12 months. So whilst it's come together now, it has been ongoing for some time, which moves us to item 9.5, the adoption of the draft Wairarapa local alcohol policy statement. Will be another piece of consultation that we will go through. Our frequent flyers, Nikki and Rob, would you like to highlight any of the key points of this discussion? Well, it's not the first rodeo this morning.
It's not.
Good ideas.
Yeah, so this is the draft Wairarapa local alcohol policy. We are here today to seek adoption for statement of proposal and consultation document. You may recall the local alcohol policy was referred to the Wairarapa policy. So the Wairarapa policy working group has been doing a lot of work on this background over the last year, and it has gone through that process with that committee. There are a couple of changes to the draft policy that I just wanted to highlight, and that is what the consultation will be around. The consultation will be run by our wonderful Masterton team as well. So although we'll be looked in, this is across all three councils, Masterton, Carterton and South Wairarapa. So the first proposed amendment is around the inclusion of sensitive sites for any new off-licence premise. And we do have a definition of sensitive sites that includes childcare, educational facilities, playgrounds, recreation, healthcare facilities, marae, and places of worship. The second proposed amendment is a change to the trading hours from 7 AM to 10 PM. The change will be 9 AM to 10 PM. The third change is around amendment to premises. The third change is around considering those events that are taking place within a period of time and may require special licenses over a number of dates. And it includes that there should be no more than 12 events under a special license in any 12 months. The fourth is related to that special licenses for alcohol will not be granted for events that are focused on children and young people under the age of 18. And the fifth proposed amendment to the policy is that the district licensing committee shall have regard to the appropriateness of consumption of alcohol with driving events. So those are the 5 proposed changes that came about through feedback and consultation with our stakeholders.
Thank you. So as Nikki has rightly mentioned, this policy is a piece of work of the Wairarapa Policy Working Group. So that's the 3 combined councils, and it's been workshopped and discussed and tweaked over a period of time. And that's what you see before you now. Councillor Bosley, anything you'd like to add to that as a member of that working group?
No, so it was the meeting we had last week before I come in was unanimous. Pretty we stand up everybody's issues have been taken into consideration. Nikki, you've done an amazing job at this point. Thank you, and the rest of the team. So we're all quite comfortable. We've got it to a point where we
Bearing in mind that this is the start of a consultation.
Yeah.
We'll take that working group to take on that come through. Councillor.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate the policy committee on this work. I think it's a really good balance between protecting the public from the bad effects of alcohol being too freely available. I think I also like the protection provided to the alcohol sales staff, but I think also it does reflect the fact that we have a very large wine tourism industry here, and that has to be protected to a certain extent. So I think it's a very good balance in a very complicated area.
I'm just a little bit worried because I probably should have just advised that, because I hope no one sees me having a conflict of interest, as I have my duty manager's license, and I'm not sure whether or not there's a conflict there. Because and whether or not I need to abstain. I'm sorry, I just like reading through some of this, I thought, actually, should I be just abstaining to be on the safe side, or
don't say.
Should be fine. I was just when we were flicking through some of the stuff that you were saying, and I was like,
I should apply for a special license.
Yeah.
I think next week.
Was it next week? Sorry.
Through Madam Chair, I don't see a conflict of interest. If you did want to make a submission on it, no, you'd have to.
Yes.
Waiting and deliberation.
No worries. I'm
So certainly experience is always welcomed in this space.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
following on from my good luck in the last one, I am going to try and take these as a bulk lot. So I am looking for a mover for the full set of recommendations, 1 through 8. Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Bosley. And just for everyone's benefit, we have moved and seconded that the Strategy Working Committee received the adoption of the draft Wairarapa local alcohol policy and statement of proposal. We note that a joint review of the Wairarapa local alcohol policy, the policy, is underway. We endorse the recommendations for the Wairarapa Policy Working Group to make amendments to the policy. We adopt the draft policy statement of proposal for consultation with the community. We note that the proposed consultation with the Special Consultative Procedure will run between 20 September and 20 October. We delegate authority to the Chief Executive to approve minutes. We note that the Wairarapa Policy Working Group will hear until October 23rd and update deliberations on November 6th. And note that the following hearings and deliberation, that following the hearings and deliberations, the Wairarapa Policy Working Group will make final recommendations to Council in December. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. It brings us to the end of our decision reports and moves us into information reports from the CE and council officers. Thank you both, Nikki and Rob, for listening. Executives update. Janice, do you have anything to add to the report?
Through the chair, now I'd like to take the report as read and just respond to any questions.
Very good. Oh, Janice, thank you.
Yeah, for Elam's.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Janice, for that report. Under your capital works section of the report, there's a comment there about the Tauhara Nico rail pipeline renewal. And there's commentary in there that Rice and Water are still awaiting a formal response following the site hui with iwi reps in February 2024. We are now into spring, summer is approaching, and I think the plan is to commence this work in March 2025. I certainly don't want to see a delay, and I imagine the Featherston residents would want to see a delay in this project. I'm just wondering as to whether our Pole Māori Narita is able to work with Wellington Water and our local iwi to resolve and get that feedback from iwi back to council and Wellington Water so that there is no delay.
Through the chair, I also would like to see this work completed. We did have a meeting arranged in Greytown, but for whatever reason, not all parties were able to attend. So I'll follow up on that.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Any other questions? Really right. A very thorough report.
Oh, my team does.
There are no further questions for the CE. We'll move on to action items. We got any questions on any of the items on the action item? Any updates from our officers?
They've updated on the action list anyhow.
The action list is getting much shorter.
It's very nice.
That's great.
407 is items being submitted to the combined council forum agenda and has been presented and is done. And as at this moment, there's no further actions to that. So I think we could close. Not to say that I'm going to stop talking to people about climate change, but I think that
Real.
doesn't need to be an open action item anymore.
Thank you.
So just through you, Chair, you did get some feedback from combined council about a particular.
Will you be joining, just from that, will you be joining their group that they were talking about?
It's not a group about, there's different silos of work that's happening between different, well, at different councils. I have got catch up plans later this week and then next week going forward, and we'll look at how we can continue the mahi in this space and try and take it into a broader conversation across the district.
Yeah, great.
Fantastic. Good work. Any other action item comments? That whizzes us along to councillor feedback on community boards, item 11.1. Councillors, do you have anything you wish to report back from the community board, please?
The text from my chair now.
Thank you. We'll start with councillor Elams, who's ready and rearing to go.
Just down and dirty, quick and brief. MCB have been, as you've heard, in public participation earlier on this morning, been engaging with Martinborough residents, ratepayers on rate submissions and SUIPs. They've also been talking to residents and ratepayers about the representation of you. I know that they, and I think, I suppose Nikki's not here, but certainly, oh, okay, sorry. The feedback from the survey response on the community boards, there has been a lot of feedback from Martinborough residents. So there's an example of Martinborough community boards work in that space. They've also been attending, and we've seen them sitting around this table here, attending the workshops with regards to the stormwater workshop that Stefan and Wellington Water carried out a few weeks ago, and also the workshop on granny spaces. Sorry, granny flats, not granny spaces. So that was my down and dirty summary. I don't know if Pip has anything further to add.
No. Amazing.
No. Councillor Gray, Councillor Foxley.
Okay. I don't have a lot to bring from the Featherston Community Board. It's been very quiet recently because it is winter and cold, and we haven't been getting together as much as we normally would. We have had the last formal meeting that we had a number of applicants for grants that we were able to work with Featherston, which was very nice. And the only other thing is to acknowledge work that John Dennison's about to pick up and keep running with, connecting with you as well, around having a berm planting policy for our council to work with. So look forward to some work in that space. And I think that was about it.
Yeah, and just getting that space that's happening between the community board and council, so that we're kind of all
Yeah, I know it's been an aspiration since the start of the triennium, so it'd be good to get some movement on that.
Low key, pretty quiet report from GCV. The last meeting was pretty much a grants funding meeting. We'll talk around the wastewater and the drinking water situation, and those members that can meet around the submissions for presentation review have been doing that. So I'll be removed from that process, but I believe it's going well. That's pretty much.
I'll just make a suggestion in this space. I think it is it's useful for us to be able to feed up from the community boards. I think this would be a really nice space also to work with the Māori Standing Committee and be able to hear from them as to the work that they're doing, and it fits nicely in here. If that's something you would like to bring to the next meeting, possibly. Give you a bit of warning.
Yeah.
no, I like that idea. Yeah, so we'll just have from next month committee members feedback, so that will allow that sort of. Councillor Olds, your planning and regulatory portfolio update. Is there anything you'd like to add to your?
There is nothing I'd like to add. I'm sure that we have the officers here today, and I'd just like to thank Russell and his team for being for capturing some of the information that is really prudent to look at trends, etc. And I would assume that everybody's read it, and we've got the officers here now, and so to answer any questions on any of the sensitive matters around planning and regulatory. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions for Colin and the regulatory team, please? They're all here, they're all ready.
Yes. And I specifically asked him to be here.
Yeah, you have to let Ela know.
I'm not councillor old. I'm young. I'm young.
Young councillor, young.
It's great to see this report, and good to see the stats, coming back through. But it was certainly something that, used to see on the agenda when I was on the Martinborough Community Board, see every time we came along, and I suppose, you know, some of us on the community board sat there wondering why the hell we were needing to see about how many dogs had been counted or how many resource consents or building consents had been issued. However, I think at the council table, it's beneficial to see that information, to see where things are, what is happening in the operational space and that side. So that's great. Thanks for that rough thing. We'll put all that together.
So just one of the things, obviously there's not many questions, which means that everybody's read the report and they're quite happy with what the outcome is. But there is a couple of things that I want to mention and highlight in particular as the efforts over many, many years of getting a dog pound. And I know that Russell's mentioned it here, and we've fought hammer and nail to get something that was a little bit better than what we currently had in Featherston some years ago. But I also want to pay compliments to the fact that it doesn't have much of a footprint. It's very much self-sustaining, and it works really, really well for something that we actually need, and it's essential for us to provide that regulation. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
While you're thinking about it, Russell, I'd just like to thank you, Colin, and the team actually for the way you've presented this. I think the graphs, excuse me, the graphs and the comparison, the year-on-year comparison are really, I mean, they really sort of speak to what you're trying to portray, and it makes it much easier for us to see where things are going, to see how they're going, their trends. So thank you. I would just have one question. The building, the consents issued for buildings, if we look at 2022, 23 compared to 23, the number of consents are well down. Do we see that across all three towns, or do we think that that is heavily impacted by the situation in Martinborough?
No, we are seeing it across all three towns. Three towns, and it's across the whole of the Wairarapa district as well. We recently did a comparison of the first 7 months of this year compared to last year over the three district councils, and we were actually higher in numbers than the two.
So they've seen a drop, but more significant than us. So helpful. Thank you. Is there another question?
So the other councils have had a greater drop than what this council has? Right. So we're still trucking along, not ideally, but still trucking along with a bit of momentum. Thanks.
Through the chair, acknowledged the key question asked, which is right on the button. And when you examine that topic, you come up with the answer or the reflection point that it's a compounding matter or area, i.e. in terms of economic downturn and constraint to towns. But nonetheless, as Sarah has said, the resulting effect is across the district. I'll just reply to a point that Councillor Olds succinctly made. Purpose of the report is to bring a state of play update to all councillors, and what we endeavoured to do with the guidance from Councillor Olds is to produce a report which both has the high level elements in terms of main projects, which are essentially growth or facility improvement topics, as well as operational trend analysis. So that combination of high and specific, which meets the needs of the portfolio rep for a group.
Well done.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Are we moving on to the infrastructure portfolio? Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.
Lips, if you'd like to lead us through, take your report as read, but highlight the.
Yes, thanking you. I hope everyone has had the opportunity to go through it. I know there are quite a few appendixes attached to the rear of that report. Just like to start off at the beginning there, discussion. We've got quite a few stats or information as to what's been happening in the roading space over the last few months. Of note, $1 million worth of repairs on the Cape Palliser Special Purpose Road. Improvements occurring there. Further down, we're talking about the resource consent, which has a report on the Eco Reef has been submitted to GW as the regulators. So that report's gone in. Council can now apply for and obtain a new resource consent to further extend those Eco Reef barriers along Cape Palliser. Is there anything further to add there, Tim?
Not a new resource consent, we're trying to view it existing.
Okay, and extend it. Great, thanks. And yeah, certainly thanks for all the work. The other point there, at that point when I drafted this, we hadn't received an update on low cost, low risk budget, but I'd imagine with last week with the announcements from central government, that information will be filtering through as to where council will end up with those additional extra budgets. Amenities, I'd just quickly like to thank James and your team for the work in that space. The toilet doors on the square there are really bright and looking flash with those new paneling and decal. Certainly improvements on the blend and the doors.
Field trip.
So I don't know if obviously perhaps not too many people have noticed them going around the square, but they look great. Thanks, James.
Different opinion.
Water services. Got some information there on the Featherston wastewater treatment plant, Lake Ferry wastewater treatment consent, and finally the Martinborough and Greytown compliance issues. I'd just like to sort of preface or follow on from there. With regards to Martinborough, it was early last year that we were notified that there was issues with the Martinborough plant and the brakes went on further new connections to the network. At that point, we were told that there was going to be a 2-year, well, the time frame was initially 2 years. We're now 18 months into that 2 years, and at 6 months, at the beginning of next year, will be the 2-year mark. But and while I understand that it's not just the desludging that needs to occur, but also work within the plant itself, it will be. I think it's about time that we get the information together and get it out into our community as to what the time frame will be, because
I'm curious.
18 months in, I think if we're going to be getting to that 2-year mark and then signalling to our community that the work will not be completed at that 2-year mark.
If it can be done in the next 6 months, that'll be incredible.
And I know that we the tenders have been put out for the desludging and the construction of the infrastructure that's needed to desludge, but we need to let our community know so that there is some expectation or time frame. Thanks. So that's my comments about there. I've already talked about the pipeline renewal with and the issues there with iwi consultation. So yeah, that's about pretty much my infrastructure.
Just following up from your comments around the timeline for Martinborough, I'm just wondering if either Andrew, who's with us online, or Janice or anyone team wants to make a comment on that at this time. Andrew?
Councillor Williams, thank you for that opportunity, and I share Councillor and the rest of the councillors' concerns in ensuring that we move forward with getting the desludging at both those sites started as quickly as possible. Update I heard last night, Councillor Williams, is the tenders haven't yet gone out, and I'm chasing the reasons why. They were due to go out at the end of August, and there is a compliance issue with Greater Wellington that I'm working through at the moment. So understand fully the urgency of that, but I only found out about that last night. In terms of briefing and updating the information on both councils and Wellington Water's websites, there is a update paper, update section being worked on at the moment that will define the work that needs to be done, so we clearly understand what investment is needed at both the plants to get back to allowing totally unconstrained new connections within reason, and that will be part of the ongoing long-term plan discussions over the next few months, if that's any help. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Further questions for Councillor Elams in regards to his portfolio update, please?
Thank you, Aidan.
Yeah, no, nice work, Aidan.
Cheers, team.
Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. We were opened with a beautiful karakia this morning and a really lovely explanation. So I would ask we have the same to close.
And as I said earlier, the karakia, to close the karakia is to basically all that energy in that space just to be absorbed into the karakia so that we all walk away clear and maurito. The key is worth to be maurito, just calm, basically go back to your families with nothing else to so closing karakia,
Thank you.
Beautiful.
We actually have 25 minutes before we kick off again.